Hello and welcome to a look at Loom for the Amiga, a game that was made and released by LucasFilm Games, a subdivision of the film company obviously, and a company that later took on the name LucasArts. LucasArts Film Games, whatever you call them, of course, was most likely at that time, or that era I should say, mostly known for Monkey Island, or Secret of Monkey Island. But of course, they also did other wacky point-and-click adventures with some interesting stories and wacky plots and puzzles and all that stuff. And then they released Loom somewhere in between all of them. Now, when it comes to Loom, the story is this fantasy world where you have these weavers who basically are weaving with fate and all that stuff. They are foreseeing that the third shelter is coming, and of course that's bad news for everyone. And our main character, Bobbin Threadbare, is suspected even of being a catalyst for the coming of the third shadow. The thing is, the character, Bobbin Threadbare, has no clue as to what's going on. He has no idea of his own destiny, he has no idea of what's what and how's what and all that stuff. He has some sort of indication of the fact that his mother was probably some very, very powerful weaver, but outside of that, he knows nothing. Well, relatively nothing. Which, of course, from a storytelling perspective, from me at least, is a very, very strong vehicle, because often you find yourself playing games where the player character knows stuff that the player doesn't. And it can be a bit wonky from time to time, but the fact that you are experiencing and exploring and discovering the story alongside the main character sort of makes it very, very interesting. For me, at least. Let's go over the technical aspects. The graphics style-wise, it's very, very similar to a game like Monkey Island. And of course, when it comes to the music, it is again the same style. The tone is very, very different because I mean it's two different games, but the musical style of supporting the storytelling and the different events was actually quite decent. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I enjoy it to a certain point, but I wouldn't necessarily call the music epic. It's very fitting for the game, I will say that much. Graphically, of course, you could always argue that this game could look prettier and it would probably and all that stuff, but for many of the games of this type, I honestly think that those somewhat not super polished graphics actually add to the story. Maybe it's just me trying to forgive the developers for not putting more effort into the graphics. Perhaps that's just the case, but then again, this is a fantasy world that we know nothing of. Maybe that's the way it looks. Whether you think it's inferior or not, it could just be the way it looks. So from a technical point of view, I am completely okay with it. I don't necessarily think it looks or sounds amazing, but I don't necessarily think it looks or sounds bad either. But the whole point for me is that's not relevant. Most of LucasArts films, whatever you call them, also games, of course, were point-and-click adventures, and this game has been listed as a point-and-click adventure, which I think is a mistake. Because that is not what it is. This is an interactive fairy tale. It's not a point-and-click. You don't have commands like go, open, examine, all that stuff. What you have, which you will see shortly being picked up by Bobbin, is a distaff. It is able to weave patterns, or cast spells if you want. It is technically spells, but it's patterns. And you weave those patterns by using musical notes. Depending on what you're trying to do, of course, you may need access to musical notes that you haven't got currently, but The game has been designed in such a way that you cannot get stuck. You cannot die, you cannot get stuck. There's no dead man walking scenario. The term that, of course, means that you can get yourself into a situation in a game where you have removed your chance for completing the game, but you are not aware of it. There's no such thing in this game. The designers very clearly stated that this game was meant to be enjoyed and completed. They had not put the time and effort into making a game that half the players would get frustrated by and throw away after playing it for an hour's time or two. But the fact that you are using the patterns to interact with any, I wouldn't even call them puzzles, I would call them obstacles, is, in my opinion, very, very brilliant. You discover patterns by clicking on objects and then a pattern will play. And if you repeat it, you'll discover that it does something. What makes it even more brilliant is the fact that most patterns actually have a reversal. Not all of them. Most of them have a reversal where if you have the open pattern, then if you reverse the notes being played, then you will close instead. And that is a super, super simple mechanic, but it works so incredibly well for this game. Now, the story itself, the game, if you know what you're doing, you can complete this game in 50 minutes, an hour perhaps. But that is not so very different from a game like Monkey Island, Secret of Monkey Island, because if you know what you're doing in Secret of Monkey Island, you can probably complete that in about an hour and a half. So, in that regard, there's not much difference between the two. But because it is a very, very story-heavy and driven game, you are unlikely, unfortunately, to want to play it more than once. But, and I will say this, I'm very, very glad that I did back in the day. The reason for me this game is very, very special and has a very, very special place in my gaming heart is the fact that the storytelling, you can detect a hint of something like Hans Christian Andersen and the Grimm brothers, or Brother Grimm, whatever you call them, and similar kind of storytelling tones. But what did it for me was that this game, specifically this game, made me aware of computer gaming being able to be so much more than just shooting down bad guys, blowing up tanks, whatever it is you do, kill aliens, all that kind of stuff. This game had me engaged in the story, and I couldn't let it go before I completed it, which didn't take an awful long time, I admit, because it's not super challenging. But it's been designed to be experienced and enjoyed, and as such, it cannot get anything but top marks, assuming you like the story. If you're not into this kind of story, it's not going to do anything for you. But that applies to any story, any film, any game, any book, anything. So there's nothing unusual about that. The problem I think this game was facing was that people were expecting something else than what it was. And as far as I can gather, it was meant to have been a trilogy, but we never got a continuation after Loom, which, from my point of view and from a lot of other people's point of view, is a crying shame. The game took a lot of hits, a lot of knocks, and a lot of whatever, which I also felt was a bit unjustified, but again, each to their own. We can't like or enjoy all the same things. What I will say though is, if you are not familiar with this game and not aware of it, it's definitely worth an experience. Playing it through, just experiencing it, and depending on your sensitivity levels, you may do what I did, which was to sweat a tear here and there. An overlooked gem, and it's such a shame because it tells such a beautiful little story. On that note, thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye for now.